empowerment of opportunities for LGBT Colombians, as well as different programming for a lot of different corporations, Colombian-based or multinationals that have offices in Colombia regarding diversity and inclusion. And we are very excited to be here. Recently, we have strengthened our cooperation with the Canadian government in Colombia through the embassy, and also highlighting the good relationship we have between the Canadian LGBT Chamber of Commerce and the Colombian one. So again, this is proof that we are very well connected. And finally, just to close up, I want to do a shout out to our fellows from ProColombia that I know they are here joining this session. ProColombia is our national CVV entity for investment, tourism, and exports. And I know they also have a free booth a virtual booth on this event. So for the people that is joining us, whenever you have the opportunity to go and visit the virtual booth of ProColombia in this event, please do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. So let's start today's discussion with something that's been top of mind for everyone, no matter where you are in the world. The impacts of COVID-19 on our small and LGBT business community. I'd like to hear from both of you about what the impact has been in your region, how your LGBT businesses are adapting, shifting, even innovating, as well as a little bit about how your chambers have been able to assist or can be of assistance. Felipe?
Yes. So in Colombia, as pretty much everywhere in the world, economically, we have been very impacted for this pandemic. What is going on for our LGBT-owned businesses since March, I would say, most of them, the ones that have points of sale, meaning physical places that were open to the public, of course, got closed by the mandatory quarantine from the government. And what we have been doing as a Chamber of Commerce is connecting with them on the daily basis, with most of the times in the different cities we operate all across the country, to get a status, how they are dealing with the situation, how their finances and the projections for resisting weekly, because speaking in months is still too broader for them. So we are talking how week by week you are going. Most of them, and especially, like I say, the ones that have points of sale, we have been trying to support them to evolve some of the business activity they were doing to online sales. Not all of them had virtual spaces already enabled to do e-commerce. So that's a big focus from the Chamber, connecting those LGBT businesses with different suppliers and partners, also small businesses, small agencies, that can help them to become online for sales through e-commerce as fast as possible. For the other ones that physically, because of the nature of their products and services, that is not that easy thing to do. What we are doing is that we are reinforcing the connections we are doing on the supplier diversity concept, connecting them offline, if it's possible, or online most of the times, with corporations that are based in Colombia, multinationals or Colombian big corporations, to try to pursue any procurement opportunities on the online basis. And surprisingly, since May, I would say it is working. Some of the businesses are already merging into e-commerce, and some other ones are trying at least to establish connections with those corporations for procurement opportunities.
Great. Do you have any examples by chance of any of your businesses in your chamber, something creative that they've done to shift?
There are two that we are really proud of. The first one is a bakery that is very transformational in Colombia, their case, because it's the first bakery that has as a policy only contracted transgender individuals to work on the bakery, both in the kitchen and also as servers for the public. As that business is closed to the public, we were able to connect them with different corporations to explore catering opportunities. So thankfully, just in a couple of opportunities, they have already get contracted by two corporations last month to provide catering opportunities and deliver them to the houses of some of the executives that are working on those corporations, because those offices, corporate-wise, are also closed. So at least, like for example, for souvenirs or for virtual events that involve eating or drinking in a certain type of social event, catering for that business, they didn't do catering before. Now they are merging into that. They can access the kitchen though, so they could cook and produce the pastries and the bakery products they are doing, and they are being able to provide that. That's one very good example, and especially because it's targeting transgender individuals that are one of the most vulnerable populations that we have in our country. The second one is very interesting, and is a digital agency for digital marketing. They were already in the digital space, so it was kind of easy for them to transit in opportunities, and we were able to connect them as supporters and partners of the Pride movement from Bogota. The organizers of the Pride, because the event got canceled, they were trying to put together a very big virtual event. So that is involving the City Hall from Bogota, as well as the different social organizations. And this agency is able to connect with them, partnering business-wise. There is money transactions being done here and there for this opportunity to do all the campaign online promoting the virtual Pride from Bogota that is going to take place next June 28th. So that's another very good example to share.
Great, thank you. Pavel, what would you like to share?
Sure. I mean, the impact, the economical impact, I mean, obviously it's all around the world, and Europe, we are suffering as well. And actually due to the different measures, and here already something European comes actually playing, because every country was slightly different when it comes to measures. There were countries in Europe which have basically less restrictive measures, like here in Austria. So it was actually a certain wave, and then afterwards the businesses started to operate. But there's also been countries, this was especially then in this ex-Yugoslavia, so further east, so being Serbia, Bosnia, there was a full lockdown. You could not actually even go on the street. So actually even any delivery services have been quite difficult. So I think this is something which we have common across the globe. But what I actually want to look at it from a little bit different perspective, and a kind of look at projection, right? So I think where the huge asset of Europe is innovation. We've been always on the top of innovation. If you look at artificial intelligence, if you look at robotics, if you look at big data, this is all basically originated in Europe. And here, actually, this whole innovative spirit of companies, I'm sure that they will keep it. And there are lots of examples of the innovation. Where we are, unfortunately, in Europe, not as good as somewhere else, like across the ocean, is scaling. We are unable to scale. So we have great ideas, but actually, for this whole adaptation to the market, it really takes time, and it doesn't really kick off. And also then connecting to, I don't know, like different funding of foreign investors, then this is definitely an issue. So this would be my view. I mean, if you ask me on, I don't know, one example of a successful transformation, I would actually name a small company which is I Was a Shirt, so hashtag I Was a Shirt. What they've been doing for some time is that they were innovating conference business. So they've been actually trying to make the conference business more sustainable. Usually you have different actually bags which people are receiving on the conferences. What they have done is that they've been upcycling different materials, basically shirts, like business shirts. And they have actually quite a large demand before COVID-19. Obviously, with COVID-19 very much impacting physical conferences, they've been now looking at how to move online. So the first actually initial start before then commercializing things was free of charge. What they have been doing, because in Europe, masks, so face masks have been actually essential in every country, but there was a huge demand, but the supply was not there. So what actually also the founder, Lazzo, what he did, he was actually himself even sewing masks and shipping it to countries like Czech Republic, Slovakia, where the people needed it. The demand was so huge that he even then made an online course so that people can actually learn themselves how to sew masks. So this actually I found an amazing example of an entrepreneurship.
Great, thank you. Yes, I would say in the States, we've seen a lot of our small, diverse businesses shifting to make PPE, which is great. Even an example at BMO, we've used our diverse supplier list to help our diverse suppliers that perhaps hadn't had a chance to do business with BMO yet to help us in that area. So, that's really nice. And I had a conversation with Justin Nelson, co-founder of NGLCC, a few days ago, and he mentioned to me, this was, I thought, really creative and stood out, that one of our NGLCC certified suppliers created a nonprofit to purchase meals from LGBT-owned restaurants to provide to at-risk LGBT youth. So I thought that was kind of a win-win, and it's something that in their core business, it has nothing to do with their core business, but they just got creative and pitched in where they could help and have a really good outcome. So yeah, it's good to hear some of those stories. So let's shift a little bit. What other non-COVID related challenges would you say that your LGBT businesses in your regions are experiencing? Pavel, do you want to start on that?
Sure. I've been mentioning a little bit at the beginning that I think Europe is a little special. So, I mean, Europe, it might sound as one country. It is way not one country, right? So we are quite fragmented. Of course, there is European Union, which also brings a certain help, but also many countries in Europe where our East meets West chamber is serving, mostly they are not part of the European Union. And just for information, across Europe, you have about, I think, 80 different VAT, so value-added tax schemes. So it's quite actually fragmented. So to do anything say Europe, that's it's a challenge. But maybe more fitting actually today's conversation as we are talking about LGBTI businesses. First of all, it's human rights, and even here in Europe. There's quite a variety. So when you start on the west side, there actually the human rights are actually quite well protected. Being it, I don't know, for legal marriage, so for civil partnership plus then for legal marriage or marriage equality. I'm privileged, me and my husband, to live in Vienna in Austria. So actually here since 2019, you can also get married. You can adopt children as well. But you move 65 kilometers, which is what, like 40 miles. So you travel 40 miles and suddenly the world changes because we cross the border to Slovakia. And who are we? I mean, how does the state look at us? Because there is no acceptance of even a civil partnership. And this is something what you actually see then further across, especially Eastern Europe. Then don't take me wrong, also there are some countries like Italy, it's also not the perfect situation. So they've been actually quite suffering last years, especially not, I think it was September 2019, the government called all of the different NGOs and organizations for a roundtable. And they actually openly said that this is not our priority. So you can see actually what actually situation they face. Although now with this new minister, Elena Bonetti, who is responsible for diversity and family, she's actually trying to bring things in order. So there is a kind of positive wave. But maybe more fitting now if you look at business. I mean, especially in the business, we still face fundamental challenge, and this is coming out in business. Again, on the western side of the Europe might be better. On the eastern side, people are fearing actually to come out in business because they fear of losing customers, losing actually contact to business partners, and at the end, not to be accepted by the society. So actually the number of really open businesses, LGBTI-owned businesses, is not high. And this is also the reason why we as EGLCC and also our member chambers do exist, because what we try to do is we try to look and search for role models. This is something super important in this part of the world, to promote them, to actually ensure that they have opportunities so that they can grow. And if they grow, then they become not only an example and role model for the community, so that people really can see that, okay, it's possible actually to be openly gay person in Serbia, for example, that I'm not losing the business, but not only inside the community, but it's also outside. So it's also about actually showing outside that being LGBTI business person is actually a professional like somebody else. Right? Here, maybe a little appeal, which maybe would help us also in Europe. We've been busy with setting up like concepts of supply diversity. Obviously, this is not really originating in Europe. So what we would really need that also all international and global companies do start look at Europe more and more, start actually expanding the supply diversity programs to Europe. Because I think this is a certain vehicle, a certain way how we can not only help the community, but actually also with this, show the role models, get them better, and actually push the social change with what we are looking at.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Felipe?
Yes, so in our case, it's very special, the situation we are facing, not only because of COVID, but in general for LGBT-owned businesses. And it's with a very sensible topic that Pavel and Europe are also merged into and have profound discussions all across their history, and that is called migration. If you, for a second, think in your minds or have a map around and you place where is Colombia located in the deep north of South America, you will be able to acknowledge that from the region we are locating within South America, we are the only country with a full legal framework of LGBT rights. And this is very new. This is from 2016 up until today. What happens is that our neighbor countries, meaning Venezuela, for example, and there is a very complex situation with the migratory phenomenon of the Venezuelans to a lot of countries, but especially with us, because literally they just crossed a bridge as the border, for example, between US and Mexico in a lot of places. But as well, countries like Panama, like Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador did have marriage equality since last year, but it's only marriage, not all the legal framework from the other rights, not adoption, nor changing your ID if you decide to be a transgender person, things like that. So because we have the legal framework of LGBT rights in place, we have been kind of, even though with the challenges the country still has to resolve socially, we have become like an oasis for those LGBT migrants to come and live in Colombia. And what happens is that not all of them have been able to emigrate in our country formally, or I wouldn't like to say legally, but not in a formal way. So in that sense, trying to help migrants that are residing in our country from our neighbor countries, trying to help them to pursue formal employment opportunities or formal entrepreneurship exercises or ideas to transform them into business or startups is being very challenging, not only for us, but actually for our government. Of course, when a lot of them find out there is an LGBT Chamber of Commerce in place, they reach for us. So the amount of tickets of consultations we have been having in the last year, I would say, trying to help them to find a job or trying to help them to mentor them and provide advisory for them to become entrepreneurs is being really demanding. Thankfully, we have been able to partner with different organizations and local governments, especially. Remember, probably a lot of you heard that in Bogota, our country capital, there is a new mayor that is the first woman that happens to be also LGBT that started the administration since January, the PhD Claudia Lopez. And her administration is being quite supportive from us, and especially in Bogota, a city that is almost a city of 10 million citizens. We have been able to partner with local governments as well as in other cities to provide advisory and guidance, where to go, what to do, first, how to solve your migratory status, how to access them to social security services, and then how to pursue an equal work opportunity or how to become an entrepreneur. That's what we are dealing these days with LGBT businesses, and it is very special because tackles the sensible issue of immigration, and we remain positive we are going to continue being open for the neighbors around that want to come and pursue their own lives in Colombia, because even though, as I say, with the challenges we are facing still as a country, in the last few years, you have been able to experience and to see or to hear in the media the Colombian breakthrough and coming as a new country in the globalization, and that is providing for them a space of hope. And we would like to materialize that hope in employment or in new businesses. And that's what we are going to continue doing, especially supporting as much immigrants as we can in our country.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Both of you alluded to this a little bit when you were talking. Can you talk a little bit about the power of connection when it comes to your chambers, corporate members, the supplier diversity network? What do you think that has done to help your businesses, or more that entire network can do to help the businesses? Pavel? Sure.
I mean, EGLCC is a kind of new kids on the block, and this also goes with the supply diversity concept in Europe. The reality of supply diversity in Europe is that you have actually good examples, good practices in women-owned businesses. They here actually We Connect International, they do a great job not only in the UK, but also in Germany, now Netherlands. There are also other countries like France starting soon. Then you have actually another minority, which is ethnic minority. This is actually Mayang and MSD UK. They're doing an amazing job in the UK. Though this already starts kind of being a little isolated and focusing only on the UK, because the definition of actually ethnic minority will be different across Europe. When you go to Germany, there will be different definition. In Czech Republic will be different definition. Here in Austria as well. And the reality of supply diversity and actually being able to source from minority suppliers owned by LGBTI people and managed by LGBTI people, this is only now starting. We have done several actually placements already, but this is still some kind of a work in progress. But it goes back, what you said, Carol, to this networking, the power of networking, power of connection. And East meets West, and I here have actually two hats. One is EGLCC, where I serve as the Deputy CEO, but also I'm co-founder at East meets West, which is the Central and Eastern European Chamber. Actually, connection, this is something what we've been living from the beginning. So actually being personally connected with the people in all of the 21 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, this was essential. Without this, we would not be able to actually build such a large network which we serve right now. Obviously, we are facing challenges with COVID-19, especially basically us not being able to travel. I cannot simply take, I don't know, even the car and cross the border to Slovakia, to Czech Republic. It's very difficult at the moment. And this also links then to our event, which we do end of this week, which is on Friday. Originally, we planned to have, as always, a live event, physical event in Vienna. This obviously, we knew that we have to kind of rethink the whole strategy. And we sat down with Ludo, the second co-founder, probably some of you know him. And we thought about, so what should we do? I mean, should we now kind of like put us on a pause, like not do anything? And it was actually quite a quick decision. No, we need to actually go further, and we need to keep the fire burning. We need to go on. And we simply roll up the sleeves, and we are hosting an online event on Friday, where we have now 310, maybe it's already rising, participants. And suddenly this turned actually into a great new opportunity, because having a physical event in Europe, you have the challenge of actually getting the people there. Now having things virtually, having actually digital way of being connected, makes totally new opportunities. So what we are then also planning is to follow up. As we have now laid the basics of running the online conference on Friday, then we will also be able to then further help the small local businesses to be connected, not only with the large ones, so this direction of supply diversity, but also actually we want to do, and we want to establish a certain LGBTI marketplace where me, for example, as an LGBTI entrepreneur, I can come and actually meet the other LGBTI entrepreneurs across Europe.
Great. And shout out to the CGLCC for being one of the, if not the first council for doing this all week virtual event. And I think it's going really well. So kudos to CGLCC.
Congratulations.
Yes.
You do great.
Felipe?
Yes, from our side, I just would like to highlight that, the power of actually delivering programming has helped our organization to grow a lot. Like we have learned from NGLCC attended their events in the US, that walking the talk is very important when you want to run a chamber of commerce, and actually delivering not only in a big scale as in the US is they have the possibility to do events, but actually programming and having a formal agenda of different content is helping our organizations deliver our value proposition. What we have been doing in Colombia in the last couple of years, that is what I believe is helping us to sustain as an organization, especially for the last few months already of these major challenges, is that we were able to build in the last couple of years strong programs, like for example an employment program, supplier diversity in Colombia program, as well as a very good a strategy of having constant and formal online communication. We were already there. We already have not only social media, but actually different websites, more than one, that are dedicated fully to programming. So that is being helping us to continue partnering with corporations, to continue raising and renew members, LGBT-owned businesses. And of course, with all the challenges these days, financially speaking, and even cash flow, that is a very dramatic word these days, we have been able to continue moving forward as an organization. I do believe learning from NGLCC the power of programming and delivering them, at least in a very small scale at the beginning, is being a great example for us. This is something, for example, that is strengthening the relationship with the Canadian Chamber. The Canadian Chamber had the opportunity to visit us last year in We Trade, that is our annual event in Bogota, usually in October. And they were able to experience from the first sight on the ground the type of activities we do, the type of people that go to our events, the type of corporations that we are partnering with, also testimonials from people that are working with us on the supplier diversity side, and then to see and to taste that little bit of flavor of the reality, how these businesses can actually really happen. We are afraid that sometimes the speech of supplier diversity or diversity and inclusion at the workplace and in corporations can be sometimes up there in the cloud and can be a very nice thing to say. But actually, when we are able to measure that and to seeing these small businesses actually signing contracts, I don't care the amount, but at least making business happen, we are like living proof that actually the entire concept and idea of NGLCC at the very beginning to deliver economic empowerment for people like us, it is actually true. So I just wanted to highlight that and to reinforce that, again, the power of programming is what is helping organizations like ours to come through even in these difficult times.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I know, sadly, due to COVID, so many people for the entire year have had to cancel their events. And I know NGLCC is working on, with some of the other advocacy groups, people with disabilities, people of color, women businesses, their typical kind of end of year big event is the National Gala and Dinner and the Global LGBTI Week. And they're working with some of those other advocacy organizations to create a unity event, which something that I think a lot of the corporate members have been asking for a long time. So, while COVID has been very devastating for most, there are some success stories to come out of it of evolving things and finding more creative ways for everybody to work together. So I'm going to ask one more quick question. And, I want to leave time for questions, but let's just talk for a second about global trade. And do you see from your LGBT businesses kind of anything on the future horizon around global trade? Felipe, you want to start?
Yes, definitely. Yes, we do see that happening, especially these days that I don't know until how long we are going to be working mostly on the virtual arena. We are big promoters of trade. Initially, with the countries we have as country formally FTA signs, trade agreements, which is the case of the European Union and Colombia, Canada and Colombia, and US and Colombia. Luckily, with these three countries or territories, we have formal trade agreements in place. So, and there are chambers of commerce, the LGBT chambers of commerce. So what we are doing is that we are still telling the LGBT-owned businesses in our country, don't be afraid, get registered as diversity supplier, update your information with us, your contact information, giving us what you are doing online. If you have already an e-commerce, if you are able to export physically, products or not services that be delivered and sent online, and then let us do the job. Let us do the job, knocking the doors of the different entities we are partnering with, and at least if we are able to provide the initial connections for them to pursue the business opportunities, we are delivering what we are promising. And yes, we are encouraging that now more than ever. For example, in countries like mine, the exchange rate of the Colombian currency with euro, for example, or with the dollars, it is very helpful for those countries contracting products and services from us, because it will be literally very cost effective. But also our entities in the country, especially corporations, are still open to receive different proposals and procurement opportunities from whoever is coming from. So I also encourage those LGBT-owned businesses in Europe and in Canada, for example, like in the US and other territories, to continue connecting with us and trying to pursue what we can do in our market. Our only responsibility is to do the job and knock those doors and explore if we can make the connections. And we are more than committed to do it.
Great. Power of the connection, right?
Yeah.
Pavel.
Sure. So when it comes to EGLCC, the European LGBT Chamber of Commerce, as we are a relatively young organization, this global trade, this was not yet the major focus, right? So what we needed to do is to actually set everything up, set the basics up to lie, sorry, I was mixing some German, but to actually to lay the basics, right? So that's actually important, and I want to be very transparent here and not kind of invent stories which are not true. But if I would look at what the predispositions are of European market, I mean, we are also very strong and very well known for several industries. When you look at automotive, you look at, I don't know, Audi, BMW, Mercedes, this is all actually European based. Then you have specialized chemicals like BASF, for example, or you have, I don't know, food industry or beverages like Nestle or Danone. So actually we have strong and super strong, very famous brands, very powerful brands, and these have a certain ecosystem. So there are also lots of connected suppliers to them. So I would actually expect that there are also, there is a share of minority suppliers which already now supply these large organizations, which means that actually they can also have a certain next level of expansion and really scale it up on a global level. Can we do it alone? No, definitely not. We would need, on one hand, the corporates who would be actually coming to us, to EGLCC, and actually having conversation with us and having the partnerships with us. And on the other hand, we would also need the links to Chamber of Commerces. And I think we have quite a strong link to NGLCC. Historically, we also have a good link to CGLCC. So the Canadian LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and we are very open to actually start a kind of collaboration. How can we actually even push further the global sales and global trade?
Great, thank you both. Okay, I think we need to shift to Q&A. So let me switch over to that. And I apologize, my lighting got a little dark. We have a thunderstorm rolling in. So. Okay. Do we have any questions? Consuela, I'm not sure. I don't see any questions yet. Sorry, I don't see any questions in the, unless I'm doing something wrong. I don't see.
I believe there is one already there on the chat.
Oh, yes.
It's probably user error on my part. If you guys see it, do you want to go ahead and address it?
Yes, Osman Romero is asking how can the GLCC help the NGLCC and the EGLCC? I guess is referring how the Canadian LGBT Chamber of Commerce can support the activities that NGLCC and the European Chamber does.
So maybe let me pick up on this one.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that actually CGLCC is indirectly already now supporting us, because we see a huge inspiration in CGLCC, and we've been in touch with Darrell and Bruce for quite some years, and we observe CGLCC quite closely. And as I said, it's a great inspiration for us. What particularly, actually, what I'm very interested about, and again, this is something what CGLCC already agreed to do, where we would like to talk more and learn more about the youth program. This is something, I think, for Canada specific. We do not have it in our chambers in Europe. And we agree that tomorrow we are hosting our European Chamber Academy, and CGLCC is part of it, and we will hear a little more about what's going on. There is a second question. Okay, maybe let me take the question about Russia. I think I was somehow expecting a question to a country which tend to be quite strict. It's not easy. So we have a presence. We even have LGBTI self-registered suppliers there in one specific industry. We are receiving from our corporate partners already now questions and actually information about possible sourcing. So we have the connection, we have a couple of businesses, but to actually scale this, it's extremely difficult. So we are there at the very beginning, and maybe a little kind of headwind or kind of like good wind is that there are already a couple large organizations. Maybe I would name exactly if it is Accenture, it is the Raiffeisen Bank International, where we're actually trying to kind of team up locally in Russia, and we are trying to actually create a certain, at the moment, internal circle of supporters of diversity and inclusion, and to also then formulate a certain agenda how things can go forward. Of course, with the propaganda law in Russia, we have to be extremely careful. Because anything basically which would ventilate on the public, anything which would actually be then in front of the eyes of youth and children can be then attacked by the local government, and we could get really seriously in troubles.
Thank you. So I can actually see some questions now. There's one more so far. I'm encouraging anybody that has a question to type it in. We do have about 3 minutes left. So from Bruce, we heard on the travel panel about the LGBTI will likely be one of the first markets to travel again. Are plans underway to market to the LGBTI community when travel opens up again?
I will take that initially because that tackles tourism. That is a very important industry for us at the Chamber in Colombia. Yes, for sure. For example, the ProColombia, that is an entity that I have mentioned before here, in the reopening plan of different destinations in our country, very popular, especially for Canadians, for example, such as Bogota, Medellin, and Cartagena, especially in the Caribbean coast, are already identifying LGBT travelers as one of the segments of priority to start advertisement and activating those audiences to start coming back, for example, to visit our country back again. Also, local CVVs like the Bogota one, for example, are already identifying key dates and key special moments during the year, in the last quarter of the year, especially between October and December, when in Colombia is expected some of the international traveling can occur again, and how to do those advertisements. So my suggestions for all the chambers of commerce, but as well for the different people and businesses that are in the travel industry, get more connected with us formally as chambers of commerce, because we could drive that information and also make the connections with different suppliers and vendors from the tourism industry to make those travels happen in a very, not only profitable, but in a very smart way.
Great. Pablo, did you want to say anything on that, or?
No, not on this one. Obviously, if we've been hit by actually tourism, and I just actually received today the message from Norbert Kettner, who is heading Vienna Tourism, is actually down 90%, right? So it's really basically what we need to do is to start focusing. The good thing about, for example, Vienna, Austria, that the LGBTI strategy is, I think, rather good and actually on good principles. And I'm sure that they will be able to pick up rather fast.
Okay, thank you. So I do see a couple more questions came in, but we are at time. So please send your questions to Pavel or Felipe through the networking platform, various channels here at CGLCC, or myself, and I can get the questions to them. I want to say thank you to CGLCC and the summit sponsors, and a big hearty thank you to Pavel and Felipe for sharing your insights today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you for all of the moderation, Carol. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Hope to see you all soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.